So last year I did a shoegaze special and I looked at a track by Ride, and in that video I asked for more of your shoegaze requests, and there were lots of really good ones, some really interesting tracks and tracks that I'd not heard for years that I had to go and revisit. And this track by Lush came up quite a lot and I had to go back and listen to it, and it's such a great song and it still stands up really well. So I'm going to start by playing through a bit of the track for you, and then I'm going to attempt to get to the bottom of what's going on guitar wise. So I'm sure that many of my regular viewers are already familiar with Lush, but for those of you who aren't, they were a British band active in the late 80s and 1990s, usually described as a shoegaze band, and of course the artists themselves rarely want to be pigeonholed in that kind of a way, but for better or for worse, Lush are usually lumped in with that shoegaze scene. The song Sweetness and Light from 1990, and originally recorded for an EP, which then I think became part of their debut album, which was kind of a compilation of various early EPs. And interestingly, this track produced by Talk Talk's Tim Freese Green, and he's a man who knows a thing or two about creating atmospheric recordings, and the production on this record is really great, I think. And I said that this video is going to be my attempt to get to the bottom of what's going on guitar wise in this particular song, and I think I've got pretty close, but I don't want this video to be me saying this is how it's done, because it's the nature of this kind of music that it's quite hard to figure out, and I honestly think that this kind of music is much harder to transcribe and to work out than million notes widdly woo guitar solos, because it's the nature of shoegaze that everything is kind of a wash and there's lots of effects, lots of layers of guitar, so it's kind of impossible to get really to the bottom of what's happening. But this is my best guess, so let's get to it. So I suppose the first thing that should be said is that this song isn't about virtuosity on the guitar. There's nothing here that's particularly difficult to play, but what Lush are all about is just great songs and interesting parts and interesting atmospheres, I think. So I think it's reasonably clear what the basic chords are, and it actually was really helpful to watch some old live performances, and then you could quite clearly see the different chord voicings that were being used. And one interesting thing is that each of the guitar players in Lush, you've got two guitar players, Emma Anderson and Miki Berenyi, I hope I'm saying that right, and they're quite often playing the same chord but in different places on the neck using different voicings. and that really serves to thicken out the sound, I think. And if you are in a band with two guitar players, that's actually a really good lesson to learn, that you don't necessarily need to just play the same thing all the time. If you're playing slightly different things and finding different places to play, then it really fills out the sound. But let's start with the basic introduction chords, and these are quite simple, I think. We've got this. So these chords are very shoegaze, where you're holding down a power chord or a bar chord and then letting some of the open strings ring and create this kind of droning effect. So what we've got here is an E power chord, so 7th fret on the A string and then 9 on the D and G, and open 2 top strings. And we've also got an open low E string as well. And another interesting thing about this song is how the bass is just playing the same riff throughout the entire track, so just something like this. So that's holding down a kind of E pedal tone while the guitar chords are changing over the top of that. So introduction, we're just going from this E shape, 2 bars of that, and then we're moving down 2 frets to a kind of D power chord with those added drone strings. So important to establish the strumming pattern here, and I'm hearing the strumming pattern as this. We've got down, 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 up, down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, down, up. So that's the basic introduction part. Over the top of that there's a little lead guitar riff which we will get to later. Onto the verse then, and this is quite simple, and we've got Miki Berenyi playing some simple open chords. It's just an E and a D chord. I'm assuming she's playing this on a 12 string like she does when she plays live, and it's the same strumming pattern. Cycling back and forth between those 2 chords, it's kind of establishing a sort of E mixolydian sound, which again is a very shoegaze kind of a thing. And whilst she is doing that, the other guitar is sticking on these power chords like in the introduction. Interesting thing about the second guitar part is every other time she seems to go up to a high A chord, which on the surface of it seems to clash with that D chord, but it actually seems to work in the context of the song. So the 4 chord cycle in the verse in the second guitar part is actually this. So for the chorus, one of the guitars is playing some quite simple chords down at this end of the neck, and we've just got an E and then a D, or it could be a B minor here. I think in some live footage you can see just a little B minor triad being used, and essentially they're the same thing and they're substitutes for one another, so it doesn't really matter whether you want to play B minor or D, you get a very similar kind of a sound. And then we're going to this chord. Another great shoegaze chord. I suppose it's kind of an F sharp minor triad. We've got the 4th fret on the A and D, 2nd fret on the G, and then the rest of the strings are open. And then we've got a lovely A minor chord here. This is the kind of 4 minor chord, a very kind of emotional sound you get with that chord. And then back to the home chord, the E again. So that's the basic chorus part. And then what's really great is how the second guitar is playing the same kind of chords but higher up the neck. So we're playing the E chord as in the introduction, And then instead of going to the D or the B minor down here, we've got this lovely chord shape. So it's that same minor triad shape. So we're at the 9th fret now. So it's 9, 9 and 7. The rest of the strings open. And then coming down to that same chord as being used in the other guitar part. And then for the A minor, that same shape played at the 5th fret in the 5th position. And then back to that E shape. So that's the second guitar chorus part. Now the only other rhythm part that I need to talk about are the chords underneath the solo, and we've got some more of these lovely drony chord shapes, and we're starting with this same A minor shape that we just had in the chorus, sliding that up 2 frets, and then we've got the D power chord and then the E power chord, and that's the solo rhythm part. So let me briefly talk about some of the lead guitar parts then, which are again very simple to play but really beautiful, I think, and perfectly formed. So in the introduction we've got this little single note part. So just playing on the top 2 strings here, and we've got this little double stop shape, so 5th fret on the B and high E. And then we're coming down to the 4th fret on the high E string. And that's played over the E chord, and it's giving you, I suppose, a kind of E sus4 to E sound. And then we're just playing the same thing 2 frets lower, which is fitting the D chord. So that's the basic part. Of course, you're going to want to go heavy on the delay and the chorus and the reverb. That's really going to help it come to life. Now, one of the most interesting things about this song for me, one of the most difficult things to try and figure out, are some of these, I suppose you call them subliminal parts that you can hear. And these are parts that aren't played during the live performances, and they're just kind of blended into the mix. So during the chorus in particular, you can hear some lovely arpeggio type parts. And it's just about impossible for me to say exactly what's going on here, just because the parts are really washed out and blended into the mix. So what I decided to do was just to arpeggiate some of the basic chords which are being strummed during the chorus, and the part that I arrived at is this one. Works well. It might not be exactly what's going on the recording, and you can experiment with some different voicings and ways of doing this, but I like the way that this sounds. So we're just using that E power chord shape, just arpeggiating from the A string through to the high E, then flipping to that minor triad shape. It's kind of a B minor triad, and then I go into this. It's kind of an F sharp power chord. You could play that down here. Both of those work. And then playing that A minor as played in the second guitar part for the rhythm part. And then back to E. The guitar solo then, and it's a lovely melodic solo, for the most part all just played on one string, the high E string. So my favourite type of guitar solo, a one string guitar solo. It starts off like this. So all pretty simple. We just got A, B, and there's a G sharp in there as well. Resolving to E, you can play that as an open E string, or you can come down to the B string if you wanted to. And then we're kind of repeating that phrase, but we're going high. And then we got some more melodic stuff up a bit higher. So we've got F, E and D here. And then we're back down to the fifth position. It's got some open E string stuff in there. And then it ends like this. So very nice little solo, quite an exotic sound as well. I'm kind of wondering what kind of sound that is, this kind of... I suppose almost a Phrygian dominant kind of a sound, but very interesting. Let me put all of that together for you. I'm not sure I'm playing the rhythm exactly like on the record, but I think you can be fairly free with it. Just bear that basic melody in mind and then just let your picking hand kind of go with the flow. And that's really about it. There is one sort of break in the tune, a kind of noisy interlude, and you got feedback and crazy noises. So that, I suggest, would be a good opportunity to raid the kitchen and to grab your whisk and to go crazy and make some mad noises. I realise that's probably going to be lost on people who've not seen my Bela Lugosi's Dead video, so do check that out if you've not already seen it. Let's talk gear then, and I've no idea what Lush would have used in the recording of this track, but I do know that from live footage it was always a 12 string and a Strat, so that's what I've gone for today. And this is actually the very first outing for this 12 string, and I've never owned a 12 string guitar before, but I picked this up late last year, and it's an Eastwood side jack electric 12 string guitar, and I'm really pleased with it. And you know, until the day comes when I can afford my dream Rickenbacker 12 string, I think this is a very acceptable substitute, and it sounds great, it feels great. I do have an association with Eastwood guitars, and they did give me the McGeoch 1000 guitar that I've used in a few videos. They gave that to me for free, but this guitar I actually bought with my own money, and I'm very pleased to have done so, because I think it's a lovely guitar that I'm going to be using quite a lot. And then the other guitar is my Strat, which is a I can never remember this. It's a 60s reissue Strat, one of the newer ones, so a nice sounding Strat. The amp I'm using is my Vox AC30, and of course I'm using some effects pedals. Now, there is the perception that shoegaze is just all about the effects pedals, and I suppose there's some truth in that, but you don't forget that a lot of the shoegaze sound is actually about the guitar parts themselves. So as you've seen in this track, you've got these kind of shoegaze chords with the drones, and it's the way you layer guitars together and you combine different sounds, combining 12 strings and regular 6 strings. That's a big part of the shoegaze sound. And then of course if you pile effects pedals on top of that, then you're going to be in shoegaze heaven. So load of pedals today. I've got compression from an MXR Dynacomp, overdrive from a J-Rocket Archer, chorus, which is an Ibanez Chorus Mini, reverb from a Strymon Blue Sky, and what else? Delay from a Boss DD6. That's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to be putting my tab and backing track up on my Patreon page. You can pay what you like and get access to that stuff, as well as plenty of other tabs and backing tracks. Thanks very much for watching. I shall see you next time.